She never imagined that a simple trip could change everything. In the middle of an ordinary flight, a small luggage mix-up became the start of a silent clash between two worlds. On one side, a young woman carrying nothing but courage, sacrifice, and dreams. On the other, a millionaire used to power, luxury, and the masks of convenience. What began as injustice and humiliation turned into the turning point of a story where pride, pain, and hope intertwined. Between piercing glances and unspoken words that weighed heavily in the air, an unexpected romance was born, one strong enough to break barriers and challenge destiny. The international flight began with the usual bustle of bags being lifted, seatbelts fastened, and strangers exchanging distracted looks. Amid the rush of passengers, one small detail turned into a critical mistake. Two identical suitcases switched the moment they were stowed away. Anise spread like a spark, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Lily Park, from a humble background, was the first to notice. Shock filled her face as she unzipped the bag and realized nothing inside belonged to her. Just a few rows ahead, a man with a rigid posture and an unreadable gaze held the real suitcase. The contrast was striking, her simplicity against the quiet weight of his wealth and status. Their eyes met, and suddenly the cabin seemed to shrink. The narrow space of the plane became the stage for an invisible tension, where every gesture spoke louder than words. The discomfort around them grew, as if everyone sensed that this was more than a trivial mistake. Ryan Carter, heir to a cosmetics empire, looked unsettled by the young woman's unexpected boldness. What should have been a simple mix-up now felt like a battle between worlds. His cold, distant aura clashed with Lily's determination, as she refused to be intimidated by the presence of a stranger so imposing. Between the switched bags and the charged stares, something deeper began to take root. An invisible seed was planted, born from the collision of two opposite realities. Nothing suggested that this moment would be just the beginning of a story strong enough to shake certainties and uncover hidden emotions. The plane landed, but the contrast between Lily and Ryan went far beyond the arrival gate. She, used to long hours of hard work and study done at great cost, stepped into France with the hope of a better future. He, raised in luxury from birth, carried the burden of a family name that opened doors while closing hearts. Two worlds that were never meant to meet were now tied together by chance. As Lily walked with steady steps, the exhaustion in her eyes revealed sleepless nights and a constant fight to keep moving forward. Her modest clothes stood in stark contrast to Ryan's tailored suit, flawless in every detail. Every glance, every difference made clear just how far apart their lives had always been, yet fate had just brought them closer than either of them could have imagined. Ryan, despite his cold demeanor, watched her closely. There was something unusual in the way Lily seemed untouched by the glitter of wealth that surrounded him. While most people tried to get close to enjoy the benefits of his status, she remained indifferent, almost defiant. That indifference to him felt like a disturbing mirror. The clash wasn't only in appearances, but also in the emotions spilling through. Lily's gaze carried the strength of someone who had endured deeper pains than her outward simplicity revealed. Ryan, on the other hand, hid behind his imposing image a void that money could never fill. Two opposites studied each other, each recognizing in the other something they couldn't quite explain. Between luggage, airports, and exchange glances, the tension kept growing, like an invisible thread that could no longer be broken. Their meeting wasn't just chance, it was the beginning of a story marked by insurmountable differences, but also by the possibility of something neither dared to admit. The following days brought unexpected encounters, as if fate insisted on crossing Lily's and Ryan's paths. The luggage incident, which could have ended there, became a silent bridge between two worlds. In discreet glances and barely noticeable gestures, something new began to take root. Lily stood out for the courage with which she faced every situation. Her simple, genuine way made it clear that she wore no masks and carried no hidden agenda. Ryan, long accustomed to flattery, found himself disarmed before that steady presence, which sought nothing beyond her own dignity. It was an unexpected strength that unsettled his certainties. Little by little, his coldness began to give way. The arrogant gaze softened into respect, and the heavy silence turned into genuine attention. With every interaction, Ryan revealed a vulnerability he had hidden for years. The forced contact after the baggage mix-up became an opportunity for profound discoveries. Through brief conversations and silences heavy with meaning, they realized they could no longer ignore each other's presence. Ryan admired Lily's courage, while she saw in him someone more human than she had imagined. The barrier between wealth and simplicity seemed to grow thinner each day. The invisible thread pulling them together grew stronger, yet also carried the weight of social differences. It felt as though fate itself was testing the limits of their connection. What had started as quiet admiration began to take shape as something greater, paving the way for even deeper conflicts. The luggage mistake seemed to linger without resolution. Ryan, with his untouchable heir stance, delayed returning what wasn't his, turning a simple error into a silent game of power. Lily, annoyed but determined, refused to back down before his arrogance. The clash between them escalated, becoming a hidden battle at every encounter. And yet, the friction slowly revealed another side. In her persistence and his resistance, a strange kind of closeness began to emerge. What had started as hostility took on shades of curiosity. With every act of determination from Lily, Ryan was forced to see beyond his sheltered world of privilege. The places they found themselves in: hotel corridors, waiting rooms, chance encounters, and the chaos of travel became the stage for attention neither could quite hide. It wasn't friendship, nor was it romance, but a bond that grew despite their resistance. Silence spoke louder than any words. Ryan, used to having control over everything, discovered he couldn't manage the situation. Lily, in her simplicity, carried a presence that needed no effort. What had begun as friction was no longer just irritation, it was an unspoken invitation to look past the walls that kept them apart. And so, the forced closeness began to turn into an unexpected connection. The discomfort that once lingered gave way to something more complex, as if both were being pushed toward a bond they could no longer avoid. The path before them was uncertain, but it carried the promise of profound change. The masks began to fall in the quiet moments when loneliness weighed heavy. Lily, her voice trembling with memories, let slip fragments of a life built on sacrifice. Sleepless nights spent studying, temporary jobs that barely paid enough to survive, the constant fear of not making it that far. In the silence between her words, her eyes told stories of hidden tears. Ryan, behind the facade of a powerful heir, carried invisible burdens of his own. The crushing expectations of his father, the watchful eyes that demanded perfection, the relentless pressure of being just another name in a family line that allowed no weakness. In his silence, there was weariness. In his rigid posture, a desperate attempt to hide his vulnerability. What began as forced proximity now revealed moments of openness. Lily saw beyond the flawless suit, recognizing the fragility of a man who had never been free to choose. Ryan, in turn, began to admire the courage of a woman who had nothing, yet walked with her head held high as if she owned the world. Through small gestures, their bond deepened. His gaze lingered longer. Her presence was no longer something he could overlook. Each shared confidence built a space of trust neither of them could explain. The barrier of social class began to crumble, even if slowly. It was as if each found an unexpected reflection in the other. He saw in her the freedom he had always longed for, and she saw in him the chance to be recognized beyond appearances. The bond growing between them was more than admiration, it was something deeper, about to be tested by forces outside their control. Ryan's return to the family mansion carried the weight of cold walls and watchful eyes. The Carter name allowed no hesitation, and every meeting was a reminder that his path had already been decided. His father, rigid and unyielding, pressed him to take the throne of the business empire. The long tables and golden halls felt more like a prison than an achievement. Meanwhile, Lily watched from a distance how grandeur could suffocate. The Carter family's imposing presence stood in sharp contrast to the simplicity she carried in her heart. In those marble corridors, she saw the emptiness hidden behind abundance, and without meaning to, her presence awakened in him a longing to escape that golden cage. Under her influence, Ryan began to change. Meetings that once felt like mere obligations now carried a different weight. His voice, long silenced by his father's shadow, began to emerge firm, though still uncertain. Little by little, he discovered he could face the inheritance forced upon him, not just endure it. The cosmetics empire, once the symbol of family pride, became a battlefield within. Between reports and decisions, Ryan fought to prove that he could lead without losing himself. And Lily, though standing on the edge of that world, was the only one who saw the truth in his eyes. The fear of failing, the fear of never being enough. Each step he took in that world of luxury carried the shadow of a choice. To remain the obedient heir, or to become the man he was only beginning to discover within himself. The weight of the Carter legacy pressed heavily on him, but something inside was no longer willing to bow. The conflict was only beginning. Back in the small town where she had grown up, Lily breathed a different kind of air. The simple streets, the smell of fresh bread drifting from bakeries, the familiar faces all welcomed her with a warmth no luxury could ever buy. In her adoptive family's restaurant, every table carried a story, every dish held a memory of childhood. Here, she wasn't a stranger, she belonged. Amid laughter and the clatter of silverware, Lily helped her adoptive father keep the place alive. His calloused hands contrasted with the delicate gestures of a daughter who became a child again in that space. The sweat of hard work was mixed with affection, and the place radiated dignity in every detail. It was a small world, but one filled with truth. It was in this setting that Ryan appeared unannounced, breaking the quiet balance. His luxury car parked on the narrow street felt out of place, and his presence drew astonished looks from the neighbors. Curious eyes followed him, wondering what an heir was doing in a neighborhood so far removed from his reality. When he stepped into the restaurant, Ryan discovered a world that couldn't be bought. Wooden tables worn by time, walls marked with age, and a warmth in the air that disarmed any trace of arrogance. He watched Lily in her element without masks, without the weight of the life she carried elsewhere. For the first time, he truly saw her for who she was. The contrast between glittering wealth and the simplicity of that place revealed something greater, two universes that, in their own way, completed each other. With every gesture, every smile exchanged, Ryan and Lily realized they didn't need to be the same to understand one another, and fate still had much in store for them. The silent bond between Lily and Ryan could no longer be hidden. What had once been only tension and confrontation was now turning into something softer, almost inevitable. In lingering glances, discreet gestures, and presences that sought each other without words, a feeling was born, one that defied all the differences keeping them apart. Lily's heart, long accustomed to the weight of daily struggles, beat differently whenever Ryan was near. His rigidity softened in small gestures, a gentler look, an unexpected attentiveness, a presence that carried a quiet sense of safety. Little by little, the arrogant heir gave way to the vulnerable man, willing to truly feel. Through chance encounters and delayed goodbyes, their romance began to blossom, something forbidden, yet irresistible. Hands brushed as if by accident, smiles were half hidden, and their closeness grew ever more natural, weaving an atmosphere of rising intimacy. It was as if time itself slowed when they were together, leaving only the two of them in existence. To outsiders, they were two worlds colliding, her simplicity against his luxury. But to them, it was simply the start of a discovery that needed no labels. The affection born in silence carried both hope and fear, as if every step forward was a risk worth taking. The growth of their love, however, did not go unnoticed. The world around them began to question, to judge, to interfere. The flame that had been lit in secret was soon tested by the weight of appearances and the resistance of a destiny that did not forgive such unlikely unions. The romance that seemed to flourish quickly found its first thorns. Social class differences, once just a backdrop, now rose as walls between them. Lily felt the sting of stares and the whispers that followed whenever she walked beside Ryan. The suspicion and judgment of others made her wonder if there was truly a place for her in his world. Ryan, in turn, wrestled with the invisible chains of family expectations. His father demanded firmness, society demanded perfection, and every step beside Lily felt like defiance. The pride he carried kept him from giving himself fully, and his hesitation became an open wound. The silence, once meaningful, turned painful. Conversations grew shorter, their meetings less frequent, and the sparkle in their eyes gave way to doubt. What had once drawn them closer now began to push them apart, as if life itself were cruelly reminding them they stood on opposite sides of the same abyss. Lily wept quietly, asking herself if she could trust a man torn between duty and desire. Ryan, alone, was lost in the struggle between his longing to fight and his fear of losing everything. Each carried their pain in silence, and the distance between them grew like an inevitable shadow. Their separation, though it seemed final, left behind an unshakable tension. Love still existed, but it was wounded, and as time passed, doubt deepened into a hollow emptiness, one that only a courageous choice could ever fill. The silence of distance weighed like a sentence. Yet amid family pressures and unspoken pain, Ryan made the decision that would change everything. Standing before his father, he faced not only authority, but also the burden of a legacy he had never chosen to bear alone. It was time to fight for what truly mattered. Meanwhile, Lily walked the streets of her hometown with uncertain steps. Her heart, still wounded, tried to accept that perhaps their story had ended. But deep inside, a flame refused to go out, as if something was still waiting to happen. Time itself seemed suspended, holding its breath for an inevitable reunion. The shock came when Ryan sought her out. There was no luxury, no arrogance, only a man willing to strip himself of pride. His eyes revealed the truth he had long hidden. He saw her as an equal, an obligation, not of a whim. Months of tension dissolved in that instant, though the future still remained uncertain. Their reunion turned into surrender. Their hands met, and in that touch, there was more than affection, there was a promise. The wound of their separation still ached, but the choice to remain together was stronger. Life, which had so often placed them on opposite sides, now offered them the chance to walk side by side. And so, with no final ending, only a new beginning, they chose to write their story together. In glances, tears, and hopes was born not only a romance, but a silent pact of love, respect, and courage. Destiny still held its trials, but the first step had already been taken. In the end, life proved that neither wealth nor status can sustain an empty heart. Only true love can turn pain into hope. Lily and Ryan discovered that kindness always prevails, and that the greatest riches are found in those who never leave our side when everything falls apart. And have you ever thought about who would truly stand by you in your hardest days? Share your answer in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to keep following touching stories like this one.